Well, good morning. I hope you had a good weekend. And thinking back to a few weekends ago, a few of us were planning to go to see a rugby match at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That would have been quite an occasion. Some people talk about that place like it's the eighth wonder of the modern world, with some magnificent engineering feat that enables them to switch the pitch, to move the grass pitch to one side underneath the structure and then put in place another feature. Sounds impressive. I think the usual place that people come to when they go to a stadium tour is the trophy room, because that's one of the highlights. We all love to see the silverware. Now, I don't wish to rub it in, but I don't think Spurs have won much silverware in recent years, but they do have some, and they show it off proudly, because we do love to recount past triumphs, to recall the moment of victory, the sense of elation and joy. It's almost as if we relive it, we come back to it and experience it all over again. I wonder if you think God does that. Well, obviously not in that particular way, but it's quite interesting in the passage that we're at in Ephesians, the way he talks about what God feels and what God does. So in Ephesians 2 verse 6, it says, God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace, expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. Is that talking about trophies? Old saints used to talk about trophies of grace. You don't hear that phrase very much now. But they meant by it somebody who'd come from a difficult background and been brought out of terrible circumstances, their lives turned around and changed. And so they're like a trophy that displays the power and the love and grace of God. And they were usually thinking of what we would call special people, amazing people, people with some story to tell. But actually, when Paul is using this sort of expression here, he's not talking about special individuals. He's talking about all of us, you and me, and that God is going to put us on display to show what his grace is all about in the coming ages, by which he means all of eternity. And what he does in our lives displays his kindness and shows the doubters, if you like, his grace and salvation. Now, maybe you don't think of yourself as particularly important, and in a sense, none of us really is. But what God does in your life is important. What he does in your life shows God's kindness in sending Christ for you. It shows the power of Jesus to transform your sin. It shows the perseverance of God in dealing with you over time to bring you to him. It shows his resurrection, his salvation. It shows his ability to save to the uttermost, right to the very end. All those things are displayed in your life. And there will come a day when the universe will see that, because God will put it on display. So the coming ages, we will be able to see that grace in each of us for all eternity. And you know, that applies to you just as much as it applies to the big names. We do tend to put the big names, don't we, as slightly higher than us. Oh, they've got more impressive testimony. They're more effective in what they do. They are more popular in the preaching circuit. They've got a web ministry that reaches millions. And so we compare ourselves and think, well, I don't do anything like that. God's grace, what is it? Well, actually, God is at work in your life. If God is at work in your life, then God is at work. And it's no less his grace and power than it is for the so-called big names. And he will show that in these coming ages. You alongside everybody else. Don't forget what that means for you today, though. That means you're on display now. In the coming chapter, in chapter 3, Paul's going to talk about the manifold wisdom of God being made known to the rulers of all the universe through the church, through people like you and me. But actually, you're on display in your own neighborhood. That's where you are. It might not seem much. You haven't got a big audience, perhaps, but you do have one. And you should be praying for your witness that will display that love and grace, even now. So pray for those around you. Pray for your neighbors, your family, the contacts that you do have. Pray that they may see the grace of God in you today. And we'll see you tomorrow with more.